Hey YouTube, here we are back in Brunswick. We are 2 days after the trip, and we're kind of just now starting to recover the whole 24 hours with no sleep, then sleep through the day, and then awake during the night and try to get caught back up on sleep. It's kind of a messed up process. So for all you night photographers who do this often, much respect. That's a terrible schedule to keep. We love doing it on occasion. But yeah, even just like once a month or even once a year, it's like takes days to recover. So we've gotten through some editing done. We've both picked out our favorites. I have 4 or 5. Spencer's got 4. Yeah, we're just gonna go through them a little bit because when we were out, obviously it was a pretty frantic evening. We were constantly just setting up new shots and shooting, and Milky Way moves quick, and then the sunrise happens before you know it.
Also, a bit delirious through the night. You know, it's hard to keep up with shooting and shooting photos and shooting video and keeping track of all of it and telling a story the whole time. So we're going to try to retell that story a little bit here with our photos.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also important too with night photos. One of the sort of the nature of the game with night photography is you don't really know what your photos look like until you get them onto the computer.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
especially in night photography. Yeah.
With digital, you get that instant feedback on whether it's sharp and whether it's somewhat properly exposed, but like there's so much post-processing involved in night photography and star photography that definitely hard to know what the final images are until you get home. So yeah, let's dive right in. So
we'll just start talking about some of these photos and we'll throw them up on the screen for you guys to check them out as well. So the first one we have here is one of Paul's. This is, I think, your first shot of the night, right?
It was, yeah. So something I tried to do a little differently this time was use some natural framing. I mean, the big wide open sky was something that I have done a lot in the past. Tonight, where there's 2 of us shooting in similar locations and bouncing ideas off of each other, I wanted to do something that wasn't just involving like a big wide open sky, because Spencer was shooting with a 14mm f1.8 on a full frame camera. So I was never going to get as big and broad a sky as him, so in an effort to just like introduce a little variety, I wanted to work with some natural framing this time, introduce foreground elements that aren't necessarily lit, which is something I don't usually do. So this photo, as you can see, is I used the trees to silhouette a frame around the Milky Way. Tide was lower this year than when we were there last year in March of 2018.
It was exceptionally low.
It was really low. So there was this sort of single standing boulder here in the middle that you can see, and then the water was lit up from has to be a planet, I think Jupiter, but I'm not.
Yeah, I got to do my research.
Yeah,
to know what that one is, but nice and bright off the horizon.
Yeah, it lit the water like it was the moon.
Yeah,
which was crazy. But this is not a blend. This is a single image taken on the 5D Mark IV with a 1635 2.8. It's shot at 2.8 wide open. As wide as can be at 16, ISO 5000, and my shutter speed is 25 seconds. And
I for your first shot of the night, I love it. I love the Milky Way coming out of the sort of that ragged, broken, dead tree there. The reflection of the light off the water there and the rock next to it, and then of course your natural framing with the trees around. It's just some point. It's great.
Yeah, so advice to people who want to do some natural framing like this at night, I highly recommend guess and check method, because I did this with a headlamp and tried to frame up my shot, and it was garbage. My framing was absolutely terrible, and I just literally moved my tripod 8 inches to the right, and it was better. Then I moved it like 2 feet forward, and then all of a sudden this framing came together. And so those micro adjustments at night are really hard, because you have to wait 30 plus seconds for your instant feedback. So I mean, it took me a few minutes to frame this up, and then this is the full crop. I didn't crop it or straighten it or anything. It's just straight out of camera with just the Lightroom adjustments. So
that's great.
Yeah, on to the next one.
So this is probably your second shot, right?
This was my second. I was shooting this simultaneously. I had 2 cameras running.
Right.
So while the 5D was capturing the previous shot, I was setting up my XD3 with the 16mm f1.4, which is crop sensor, so it's a 24 equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I was doing for this shot here was I set it up sort of time-lapse style, where it was just shooting a photo constantly. I actually set it up 5 at a time so I could go back and review and then work on it again. And I was just walking up and down the road with my headlamp on my head sideways, sort of aiming in, because I really like the way those rocks cast those little pillars of shadow into the walkway.
Yeah.
But with headlamp light painting style, these were 25-second exposures as well, I'm fairly certain. So, or maybe even 30 seconds. No, what was I doing here? Yeah, so these are 20-second exposures. So I'm shooting f1.4 wide open. I focused for the stars on this shot because I knew I wanted my stars to be sharp, but the foreground is, even at 1.4,
I know,
it's still sharp.
You're far enough away from your subject here that it doesn't matter. I mean, your foreground, your lit up foreground, your trees, the rocks, and the Milky Way is all tack sharp.
Yeah,
That's a great photo. I know you had trouble with the colors from your headlamp.
Definitely, I did.
Casting on the road in this pathway here, and it looks like you did a great job correcting those, and it really blends with your scene well. So good work.
Another single image too, no blending. This was just, I did a little masking on my bottom right, but all Lightroom adjustments, no Photoshop involved on this one. So Lightroom has that new luminance masking, which is just so helpful for stuff like this.
Yeah, especially for night photography. It's awesome.
These little brushies down on the bottom that stick up into the shadowy area, they needed correcting because my headlamp was, the white balance for headlamp versus stars is just so different.
Yeah. And
being able to correct all those brushes without having to painstakingly go in and brush each strand of grass was just huge.
Yeah. So looks great.
Awesome for Lightroom.
Move on to the next one.
Next shot. This was one that I committed to for the rest of the night. After my first frame shot, I had this idea that I knew I wanted to do this, but I wanted more of the Otter Cliffs in my foreground. So same idea, set up a shot, had it set time-lapse mode, same settings, ISO 5000, f2.8 with the 16 on the 5D, and just set it up as a time-lapse and just kept shooting, and then we ventured down onto the beach. I did some light painting on the rocks, which I ended up not liking, and then this is just from slightly wrapped around on the cliffs over, as you can see in the photo, pretty much. I'm just behind those trees on the left, aiming my headlamp towards the tree on the right. And it was just a quick 3-second flash with my headlamp. And another single image, no blending, just Lightroom adjustments and a little... this is similar to the other one. I had to do a little color correcting on my foreground. I actually went the other way with it this time. I corrected my image to the foreground and then I brushed in my white balance adjustment and exposure adjustment for the sky. But same idea, luminance masking was super helpful in and around those branches, and came out really well. This is one of my favorites from the night.
It really is, yeah. I like your framing from the one before, like the natural framing, but I feel like you refined it and took it a little further. And I've seen you cast this sort of light on some trees in the past with night photography, and it's really worked out, and you executed it super well here.
There's something about the way the headlamp just lights up the green branches that I just absolutely love. I've done it at the golf course a few times.
And the greens your greens look really natural, and they're not too green or too yellow.
Yeah, they don't have that weird blue sort of hue to them, and they don't come out all dead looking.
Yeah.
Anyway,
great.
Favorite shot probably from the night. It's a really cool one. And then the next one is this is a blend, foreground, background. The sky is a single image, so this was shooting time-lapse mode again. I set it up and shot a bunch thinking I might blend the sky for noise reduction, and this is with the Fujifilm. I was shooting this while I was waiting for my 5D to get the previous shot we were looking at, and so the foreground and background are about a half an hour to 45 minutes apart. I wanted that blue hour casting on the rocks so that you could see a little bit of the foreground. I didn't want to light paint the rocks. I did that last year and I didn't like it as much. So this is just 2 images. Foreground is the same settings as the background, just a half hour, 45 minutes later. And it's a 20-second exposure, still at f1.4, ISO 3200 on the XT3 with the 16:1.4. And that sky, just, I don't know what it was. I was scrolling through and every image was pretty pretty normal, just like a regular sky, no crazy meteors, no shooting stars, no nothing. And then just this one image of it was 4 or 5 streaks in it. It was wild. And so yeah, I immediately gravitated to this shot. And I did honestly. I knew the shot would be a little boring in the sense that I got a very similar frame last year, but the fact that all those meteors sort of crossed my Milky Way sort of added that extra element of interest to the shot this year.
Yeah, great blend, great Photoshop work. Looks awesome.
And now on to Spencer's shots.
Yeah, so this photo I went down on the beach for. I spent a really long time finding an interesting foreground. It's really hard to sort of arrange the rocks in a cohesive manner. But I finally found this rock with this moss on it. It was nice long and it was leading right out towards the Milky Way. So I spent a little bit of time getting my tripod just right, and shot. I think I shot like 10 or 15 different frames before I finally decided on this one. I mean, like, I was down there for at least an hour setting up and shooting this one, but I am just absolutely ecstatic with how this one came out. Let's see, settings. I was shooting the 6D, the Canon 6D, with the Sigma f1.8, which is it's really my first time getting out shooting the Milky Way. We tried to go out to pop them once and got shut out by some clouds, but shooting this lens is awesome. It is tack sharp through and through at 1.8, and it just gathers so much light. I got so much detail in the Milky Way, and this is 7 or 8 images stacked. I stacked the Milky Way and stacked the foreground, but I mean, just the amount of time that passed while I was shooting was how much time it took me to get this shot. So it's not like a blend like you did earlier, where you waited 40 minutes in between to get a little more ambient light. This is just the ambient light from the Milky Way and the stars. So I'm really excited.
And so so just to be clear, it's stacked for noise reduction purposes.
Right.
For those who aren't familiar, when you shoot multiple frames at night, you can stack them all on top of each other in Photoshop and have it only keep the pieces that are the same, so the noise and grain will fluctuate from photo to photo, and Photoshop will recognize what's grain and what's an actual star or speck of light on a rock or something like that, and keep only the real exposure and reduce the noise dramatically. So it's just a noise reduction technique that works beautifully. Takes a long time. You need a heck of a computer and patience. And
you grab the median value of each pixel through 6 or 7 images,
right?
And that gets rid of your noise, and it really worked out in this photo. I'm super happy with how clean and crisp this whole thing looks.
You want to talk about your settings on this one a little bit? You have that on there?
Yep. So again, I was shooting the Sigma 14 wide open at 1.8. I was ISO 3200, and I did a 30-second exposure. If you zoom in really close in the corners, you get a little bit of trailing, but I don't mind it with a lens that sharp. If you are actually tack sharp on the stars, they don't look as big. So doing a little bit longer of an exposure, letting those trail just a little bit to get a little more brightness out of them. Looks great. And
plus, looking at the 4 or 5 or 600 rule, whichever you subscribe to these days, shooting a full frame 14 millimeter, you really can get away with a 30-second exposure when you're shooting that wide.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's pretty cool.
I was a little worried that the Milky Way was going to be really small in my frame with the 14, but it's really filling the frame nice here. I like it.
Well, I think what you did really well with this is you managed to use the extra width of your frame, shooting wider than usual. We usually shoot no wider than 16, and then shooting that extra 2 millimeter, the 14. You really brought your camera framing down a little bit. Normally your horizon would be a little lower in your shot,
right?
And so because you had that extra latitude in the frame, you used it to capture more foreground and sort of like lean up and over this rock a little bit, giving it a lot of depth and creating this really dramatic leading line from the bottom left and sweeping up and Yeah, just a fantastic frame. The little sort of cobblestone looking trio on the right side.
I know.
And then the crack in the bottom of your big rock and the green cap on top of it, which for those who don't know, that is dangerously slippery around there. All that green on top of that rock is indicative of how far out the tide was and where, you know, Spencer was scrambling. And yeah, I mean, just the fact that you found a framing like that in the dark is just fantastic.
Yeah, wasn't easy, but worth it. Worth every moment. So this next photo was much later in the night. This is actually a blend of two photos. It's a stack for the Milky Way. I shot 6 images and stacked them for noise reduction, and then waited, I think, until probably 30 minutes before sunrise when there was some ambient light, and you can see it on the rocks here. It's sort of glowing from the left side of the frame. Yeah, that's just a single image because I shot a much lower ISO and a much deeper f-stop. So I love the way this blend came out. My techniques are getting a lot better since last year we went there. And yeah, again with the Canon 60 with the Sigma 14, 25 seconds for this one for the sky and the foreground. Yeah, wide open at f1.8 for the sky, and then my aperture for the foreground was f6.3.
And presumably ISO, well, like 3200 for the sky, and then, I mean, you dropped it down to like 100 for the foreground, right?
Yeah,
which is why the stacking wasn't necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
I made sure it was nice and bright out, and then underexposed my my foreground,
so it would blend a little
bit nicer. Yeah. That's something I've really tried to pay attention to this year is making sure my foreground and my background are really cohesive, and they don't look like two different photos. So.
And to be honest, I mean, you didn't really change the image that much, and based on your blend, I mean, really, you can look at the single image from the night, and your shot isn't that different. It's just, you know,
a little cleaner.
It's just cleaner, yeah. You just have a sharper image. You're shooting ISO 100, which is just fantastic to be able to do.
Yeah.
And then you didn't have to do your blending. Yeah, it's really nice. I love that shot. I shot that exact same location when we first arrived, and my framing was just garbage. And so the fact that you went right there and found those lines, I mean, I must have been inches away from where your tripod is set up for the shot, and I didn't even see it. So, yeah, composition is a...
I do wish the Milky Way is a little lower in the sky, but can't be in two places at once, you know. So
yeah, no.
But I'm still happy with it,
and it moves up from the horizon fast. You know, like you think, oh, you have 4 hours to shoot. There's plenty of time, but it goes quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then a little pleasant surprise in the morning. We were just packing up and finishing off that time lapse from this video, and all of a sudden the sliver of the moon started to peek up in the early morning glow, and just really stunning to see.
Yeah,
really nice.
Quite a display.
Nice finish to the night. So we both have pretty similar shots here.
Yeah,
like you shot. I was shooting the XT20 with a 230 mil, which is like a 350 equivalent or whatever. And you were shooting 200 on your 60, so
yep.
You have a little wider of a frame, but basically the same thing. And I mean, I don't want to speak for you necessarily, but I literally applied a color profile, like my in-body color profile, and then that's it. I think I might have bumped my exposure like half a stop or something because I was shooting a little dark. But yeah, I did almost zero editing. It was basically a raw image with a JPEG color profile applied to it.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to mine. I think I bumped my exposure and my whites up a little bit, but added a color profile, and even before the color profile, it's like, this is a raw image, and I couldn't believe it. I'm not afraid to show the raw image and compare it to our edits.
Yeah, they're similar.
Here, so yeah,
awesome. Cool. Well, yeah. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Hope this was interesting and enlightening. We felt like we might just spend a little bit more time talking about these because we got a lot of photos. We were out there for a really long time. This is sort of our second annual, if you will.
Yeah.
Kicking off the Milky Way season in the spring, late March, early April, and it's a big trip for us. A lot of work. If you guys want to get into night photography, I definitely encourage you to do it, but be aware. It's tough. the elements get to you. I mean, we were bundled up. I had long johns, fleece pants, and pants on. I had like 4 coats and 3 shirts, and I was still cold. We had to get back to the car for a half hour after we'd been out for a while, because it's rough out there. It's a long night. You're tired. You're hungry, and yeah. So I encourage you to get into it, but don't take it lightly. Take it seriously, and you'll have fun with the results and the adventure of it all, and you'll know pretty quickly if it's the style of photography for you.
Yeah.
So let us know what you think of all or any of these shots. If you have a favorite, please let us know. We're obviously a little too close to these to sort of know what's good and what's not anymore. And yeah, if you have any questions at all, we'd love to answer your questions. Leave them in the comments below or message us directly. Yeah, like this video if you enjoyed it, so we know to make more stuff like this. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more from us. And thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.